skip down here in chapter 35, down to verse 20. Because they've kind of been given this piece of instructions about this is what Yahweh has commanded, which we just read up there in verse 4 and 5. Now in verse 20, the whole Israelite community withdrew from Moses' presence and went and had dinner. Wait, no, that's not what it says. They went to Walmart. They went to Home Depot. What'd they do?
Come on, they didn't have Home Depot.
Okay, Lowe's.
United.
Sutherland's.
It's really old, it's Payless.
Payless, there you go.
And Gibson's.
They went to Burley's Flooring.
I bet you they didn't go to Piggly Wiggly, because we know that's
They
not
would
clean.
not have the Piggly Wiggly. That was very true.
Here in a few months, they go to H-E-B.
That's right.
I used
All
to
right,
go to
so-
Piggly Wiggly.
Ah, see, but you grew.
So verse 20, the whole Israelite community withdrew from Moses' presence, and everyone who was willing and whose heart moved him came and brought an offering to Yahweh for the work on the tent of meeting, for all its service, for the sacred garments. And here's what they brought. All who were willing, men and women, brought gold jewelry. They brought blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, ram skins, let's see, the silver and bronze. And now verse 25. This is where they brought everything out, but they didn't just pick it up and take it over to the offering. Verse 25. Every skilled woman spun with her hands and brought what she had spun, blue, purple, or scarlet yarn, and fine linen. All the women who were willing, and had the skill, spun goat hair. So they didn't just go pick it up out of the closet or run down to Walmart or whatever. They put time and work into it to make blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. I'm guessing they probably didn't just, Egypt probably didn't have a whole lot of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine twined linen. The goats are laying around for them to take with them. So there was work involved, but they were willing to do it. Yes, Brother.
I just think it's interesting to understand that if they did these things, there was a time period involved. It wasn't like they went, got it, came right back.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. They went, boom, then they're done.
Yeah, but there's
There was
obviously,
time.
there's obviously some time that's elapsed between the time that they left Moses' presence and
When-
brought gifts.
Still other stuff. Yes, Jim?
What's fine twine linen?
I don't know, so we're not even going to talk about it.
Okay.
It's some kind of, I guess, really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if
Really
we have
don't
a
know.
more common term for it or something like that, or,
Missy says there's an art to it.
okay.
She's a teacher, so she knows stuff.
You know, if we go by a sheet,
Yeah,
a
we
piece
don't
of cloth,
think.
there's there's
Dean-
count.
Dean
You know, so we know,
Yeah.
so that has something to do with it.
That's what I'm, yeah,
It's
I
a,
mean,
I
I'm just
don't
wondering
know, I don't know the
I bet
details.
it's like a seriously high thread count
Yeah.
Egyptian cotton
Probably
sheet.
700.
Egyptian, yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah,
Well, it came from Egypt, right?
Yeah.
However they made that stuff. It'd be interesting, Jim, your homework. 'cause I haven't done it in a
Yeah,
while.
right,
Your
okay,
homework for
been a
next
while.
week.
We already have some Poor
Yes,
guy.
So, I don't know if
There
it's
be
the same
quite
one
a-
on the tabernacle, but whenever I was looking into it on the priest garment, the word for fine twined linen was literally just white.
Really?
Yeah, it was just white. And but also, I was looking at it, and the word for red actually doesn't mean scarlet; it just means worm. It's actually the same word that's used for worms in Amana. So pretty much they got the dye from a worm. But here's the cool part about that: the specific one they got it from would actually lay its eggs on a tree and die on the tree, and then excrete, red fluid. And so, just even the dye that was on the tabernacle and on the priest garments was a picture of Messiah. So I just thought that was really cool.
Wow. What little worm had to die to get the dye?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Is that what
And
you were
Diana
talking about, the
died.
snail earlier?
The snail, yeah, something with the snail is the blue.
Yeah.
They get the blue color from a certain snail. I'm not sure if it's their blood or if it's, I don't have any idea as far as how they get it, but yeah. Because that's where most dyes come from, is a plant or animal. You know, like red number 40 comes from beetle shells and stuff like that, anyway.
It used to, now it's all
Yay, chemicals!
that are not very good.
No, they're not good.
A lot of the stuff is from unclean stuff, though.
Yeah.
There's certain.
don't need it.
We're confused about this thing that the blue is coming from. Is this an unclean, like, what was it, a shell?
It's a
It's a
snail.
Snail? So are snails kosher?
No.
No, but you don't eat it.
Neither is a
That's what he
worm.
said, don't eat them.
You just don't eat them, you just wear them.
Okay.
So that means we can use fabric softener since we're not eating it, we're just wearing it, because I quit using it because most of them have pork in them.
Oh.
It
But-
sure makes a difference.
I
in
mean, you look at
clothes.
those graphs or those posters that show the pig, and then it's got pharmaceuticals to everything, you know, as long,
It's all over.
but so maybe as long as you're not putting it in your body.
Or on your, you're not supposed to touch
Most soap is made out of,
Well, you're
originally made
All
out
right,
of.
all right. Moving along. I was thinking this could be hours and hours and hours about this subject.
I never would have thought it. I don't
Okay.
have a
Form
day
and
dinner.
function on
I watch it.
Water hard. But poor Angela,
Oh, I know.
of course, there's only a few kids, so she can probably stay for a couple hours, right? Larry? She'll probably stay for a while. All right, we'll just keep on going then. Okay, what I want to talk about is this giving willingly. Again, we just talked about the women who spun all this stuff. The leaders, in verse 27, brought onyx stones and other gems. I don't know about Jay, Larry. Don't ask us to bring onyx stones and gems, because I sure don't have, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have many onyx stones laying around.
Just bring what you have.
But again, moving that to, current day, symbolic. It's symbolic of things that we can bring. Because when you think about this whole thing, and this is the whole point that I wanted to kind of go to anyway. The whole structure, all these pieces, they're part of us. We apply ourselves to be a lamp. We lay down our lives daily. Offer up prayers all the time. We drink the water of the word. We feast on the bread of life. We hide the Torah in our heart because we are, the house of God, the dwelling place of God. Individually, we are. But also, collectively, we are the body, the house. We all have different gifts and abilities and talents. I mean, how many in here participated in work days down in Plains? Pretty much everybody here was down there.
Well, I didn't get to go, but I brought what I had. I brought
Exactly.
food to
Brought what
take
you
for
had.
people to eat.
Exactly.
So,
And we appreciate
Yes,
it, Miss
yeah,
Did we ever?
see?
We love the food. Yeah, we all have different
That's good.
abilities. I mean, you look at this, not everybody brought gold jewelry. Not everybody brought fine twine linen. Not everybody brought bronze. Not everybody brought whatever. One thing that's just kind of interesting, just in verse 24, everyone who had acacia wood for any part of the work brought it. They just came out of Egypt in slavery for however many hundreds of years.
We're dirt poor.
Dirt poor. Did they plunder acacia wood too?
I wonder how many of them walked out of Egypt and the Egyptians were handing them this acacia wood. They're like, well, thanks, but what am I supposed to do with this? Can't
Just an
eat
interesting
it.
little thing. Yes, Leah.
Well, I wonder if after the Pharaoh and all his army were washed and that stuff started coming up on shore, if they went and, salvaged a bunch of
Interesting thought.
the chariots and things like that.
It's a very
They
interesting
covered it
thought.
in gold and decorated them with gold.
I would think those would sink to the
Yes,
bottom of the
Yeah,
gold
but-
part, but God could cause it to wash ashore.
Yes, Jay.
I kind of
Just
look
like
at
the
this
axe.
a little different view, like normal, but
No, you would never do that.
it's like, we're out here in this desert, we're dragging all this stuff along. I don't need it anymore, let's bring it here.
Finally, I can get rid
Thought I'd bring that point up.
We don't have room for this in our tent. Surely they were thinking of the homes they were gonna build.
I can barely carry these
of it. I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear
They
that.
probably were thinking of the
Just-
homes they would build and the
the
homes
women-
they would
just the
think of it as
women.
a burden.
Just the way-
Just the women.
So you're pushing where they
And the
come
men
from.
kept saying, just leave it here, we'll buy new when we get it.
That's good, yeah.
And I can see Aaron, hey, wait a minute, they got a Lowe's up there, let's go. It's on Google Maps, it's right there. That's really good, thank you. Okay, so,
Maybe those Arabs that were coming by, were some of them were dealers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I'll trade you this earring for a piece of acacia wood
acacia
over there.
wood. Again, what do they do in carrying acacia wood rather than from the dealers, so.
Because we know there were
Okay.
merchant traders.
Yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
much fun, because we didn't used to think this way when we read the Bible, most of us just skipped over all
Skip
that.
right
Oh,
over it.
totally skipped over.
Now we really wanna know, imagine what it was like.
At our study on Wednesday night, studying Romans, the first night we studied the first 4 verses of Romans chapter 1 for about 2 hours. You know what the footnotes at the bottom of the Bible say? In that culture of the time, letters were often written with introductions, and Paul is spending 6 verses introducing himself. That's all it says. It's an introduction. Where he's called to be an apostle and set apart for the gospel of God. We took an hour just right there, you know? But because we don't think about things like we do now. If we only knew then what we know now, I don't know. We'd be in really bad trouble. But,
Like Brad said, we've gotten so far down the mountain.
yeah, we're struggling to kind of get back up.
And it's all about the concept of, do I need to look at this and see how I can apply it to my life?
Exactly.
Or whether, you know,
I'm gonna look at this and that's my goal.
Yeah.
That's where I'm heading towards is
Yeah.
that. Because we're never gonna
Perspective.
be here completely. We're always gonna be, well, I did that, I did that, and, you know, I'm not where I wanna be. Because we're not where we wanna be. Because if we were where we wanna be, we wouldn't be doing anything. Because when you're comfortable, which goes to my next point. Love how God put these little segues right in here. It's just too these people gave willing. Yes or no?
Yes.
They gave willingly out of what the gifts they were given, out of what they had handy, out of what they wanted to get rid of, what the burdens they were carrying around, or whatever, however you want to term it. They gave willingly. It was not commanded to do, you give this, and you give this, and you give this, and you give this.
Not only that, he gave them an out. He says, only give it if you want to.
Only give it if you want to, exactly. Be willing.
And don't give
Okay.
it if you don't want to.
Now, skip down into chapter 36, and we're going to skip down to verse 2. Let's see, 36, chapter 36, verse 2. Then Moses summoned Bezalel and Aholiab and every skilled person to whom Yahweh had given ability and who was willing to come and do the work. So they got their ability and their willingness from who? Yahweh, exactly. They received from Moses all the offerings, this is Bezalel and Aholiab, received from Moses all the offerings the Israelites had brought to carry out the work of constructing the sanctuary. And the people continued to bring freewill offerings morning after morning. So all the skilled craftsmen who were doing all the work on the sanctuary left their work and said to Moses, people are bringing more than enough for doing the work Yahweh commanded to be done. Then Moses gave an order and sent this word throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. To make anything else. Did you catch that? And so the people were restrained from bringing more because what they already had was more than enough to do all the work. Has anyone ever been involved in any kind of project, church project, Hebrew roots thing, personal project, where you had so much stuff, you had to get people to stop bringing?
Please don't bring it anymore.
Please don't bring it anymore.
The tornado here at Lubbock, they opened up the field house and they kept bringing stuff in, and the town was distributing that. It just, people just kept giving and kept giving and kept giving. And some of it was really good stuff, some of it was not, but it was very amazing to see how much was just being shipped in from all over the country on that, so.
Think about Joplin, Joplin, Missouri, a couple of years back, Oklahoma City back in '99, and so there's Haiti, all these
East
different
Coast
things.
just got hit with that
East Coast.
snowstorm, and then that
So-
the hurricane and then the snowstorm.
Yeah.
You know?
So when there is a focus for giving, what are we capable of? Huge things.
Well, I just think he's given us everything, so, I mean, some people say, well, yeah, it is mine, because he gave it to me, but then, I can't help but think, well, everything is really his, and we're just using it and
Supposed to be.
being vessels.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of the
Stewards,
parable,
aren't
it says that, it's when it talks about the parable of the talents. If you don't use it, it's gonna be taken away from you, but he who has more shall be given.
much was how many talents did the guy who didn't do anything with it have?
One.
One.
How much gold was the lampstand made out of? One talent. And we're to be the light of the world. Don't hide your talents.
So,
Okay,
And then,
yes,
well, just, in one is sufficient. One is sufficient.
one is sufficient.
It wasn't because he lacked enough to do something with.
Right, exactly. He had what he could do, but he didn't do anything with what he got.
Right.
Yes.
then in Romans, or in Corinthians, Paul tells us, Paul told us that the Spirit gives each and every one of us gifts, but they're not so that we can use them for ourselves. He said, they're for the good of the whole body. So they're not to be hoarded, they're not to be buried, they're to be used, and not one of us is to think that we don't have something to contribute to the body. We just have to figure out what it is that God gave us to give to the body.
Yeah. Yeah, because 2.5 years ago, I wouldn't be standing right here. I didn't have anything to offer anybody. Then I realized, okay, God, whatever you say. You know, Alan got taken out of the picture, and he said, here, now you have no excuse. You know? But I was willing to do it. How willing are we individually to give to Him what we have? That's a question we have to ask every single day. Whether you're at work, at school, at home, at the mall, wherever you are you giving willingly of what He's given you for the benefit of building up His house, which is us individually, so that's where we have to have this time. If we have everything running on in the world except this, just don't even worry about that board, because you're not going to be able to do any of that. But also, collectively, our job is to build a house. We're seeing it right here. We all have different gifts and abilities and talents and that He calls us to use, but you can't call yourself. You can't call yourself. And you can't set yourself apart for Him, but He can set you apart. He set apart Paul. He set apart Moses. He set apart Abraham. He chose them. What can we do if we're called and chosen? Can we still reject that?
Yes.
What can we do to not reject that?
Be faithful.
Revelation 17. The called, chosen, and faithful are with the Lamb. Not just the called and chosen, not just the called. There's the whole lot wrapped in.
You realize how many people say in the other churches that we've been to, I just don't understand the Bible. But when you sit there and start with the Old Testament and read it and sit and discuss it,
All of a sudden
it all comes to light.
the light goes on.
Yeah. And also, I've also found out is that if you, they found out that if people start observing the Sabbath, the Bible starts opening up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because He says it is a sign, I will know who my people are by the day they worship.
That's right.
And they will know who their God is by the day they worship.
That's right.
Where's
Jay,
that
you got
at?
something?
Where's that in Scripture?
The
It's
sign?
It's in, I think it's,
I'm just reading it.
I think it was in Exodus.
Exodus 31 says it's my son.
Yeah.
There's a couple different places.
It's more than one place. It says that about 4 or 5 times.
It's
Exodus, and I think,
Yeah.
Leviticus
I
23.
think it's 23, that's what I was
That's
thinking.
exactly where it's at.
Deuteronomy, I think's got it in there too.
Yeah.
So your homework, look it up. Look it up. Don't rely on somebody else to tell you. Look it up. How much time, Jay, how many hours a day do we have? How many hours a day do you have?
I got 24, how many do you have?
I got
Not
24.
enough.
I got 24. Aaron, how many hours a day do you have? You got 24? No.
20, I only get 23.
We get 23.
I think Obama's cut us down to 22.
I think, yeah, part of the sequester.
I think tonight we technically only get 23.
That's right, see,
Well,
see?
tomorrow we get 23. Tonight, technically, we still have
Speaking of that,
23.
does it change? We could start a petition and stop stupid daylight savings.
Yes, let's do that.
Please.
Okay, so,
It's 24 hours.
we'll have 24 hours a day, right? Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Whether it's sundown to sundown, midnight to midnight, we all have the same 24 hours. What are we doing with them? How many hours you spend sleeping?
Not enough.
6 on a good night.
5 to 8, yeah,
I
right.
know.
How many hours a day do we spend eating? 20 minutes maybe for
Most
3
people,
meals?
most people eat on the run.
Eat on the
I
run.
eat on
I
the
would say
run.
that.
How many hours do we spend driving?
More.
How many hours do we
Working.
spend
Working.
working? How many hours do we spend talking on the phone? How many hours do we spend on Facebook? How many hours do we spend pouring through email forwards, and how many hours do we spend, excluding Jim, on YouTube? Because Jim is doing absolutely amazing, fantastic, beyond words work on getting our stuff on YouTube. Thank you, Jim, very much.
We love
That is
YouTube
awesome.
studying.
Yes.
YouTube's cool. Yeah, if you're watching and studying, yeah, if you're checking out the latest cutesy kitty cat video, it probably isn't gonna be all that beneficial to building up the house.
We turn YouTube on, our kids scatter. We've had this, when their kids are there, Burley was over there just going, and I have him going, stop it, because really, they're going, oh, we gotta go, we gotta go. Because he's fixing to put something on, and they gotta leave, and the minute I kind of kicked him, they stayed all evening and which we need to visit with them and share time with them, but the minute we turn on one of our Bible studies, poof, they're gone.
Gone. For now,
Yeah.
until
Till they need babysitter.
the
We have
visiting is more, relationships get more, you know, it's kinda like here.
Have you ever thought of handcuffs?
Kind of like here with, you know, we love to sit and talk in Midrash and study and learn and grow and all these things, but does most of our growth happen here in this 2 hours that we have on Saturday? Where does our growth happen? Personal time with Him, time with each other. You know, Larry and Burley and Felix came to my house one night, the last ladies' night out at your house, and we didn't do a Bible study. We mentioned a few scriptures now and then, but we grew more as a body in that, however many hours that was, a long time, but it was great, you know. Like Alan always says, don't isolate yourself. That's why. But you need your personal time in study, because you've got to check stuff. If you're not watching GLC or YouTube or being in a study and whatever, and you're not checking out what you're hearing, you can be led astray real quick. It's something that's really I've been convinced of lately, that I never used to do. I'd accept whatever was given to me. Well, guess what? As soon as I start checking it out, somebody asked me. They said, where'd you get that scripture? You know, how did you justify that? Where'd you find that? Why did you start talking about that? Did it just because it made sense to you? Of course, one say, well, yeah. I said, no. Well, back and looked. You know, but if we don't go back and look, how far off can we get?
You know, what's interesting is that I've always been told this, that, well, they got a different interpretation of the Bible than you did. And then I got to reading the Bible quite a few times, and I finally got down to where I started knowing it pretty well. And when they would say that, all of a sudden it hit me one day. So I turned around and asked, where did you get that interpretation out of the Bible? And they couldn't find it. And then after about 50 times asking this and not finding an answer either time, I finally figured it out. They got their interpretation from the church that they were going to. Their church taught them that the Bible said this, and they didn't. And so now when I teach the Bible, I teach them. Now, what I'm going to teach you is not hard to learn.
Right.
The hard part is to forget what you were taught it said, because what you were taught it said was probably, when it contradicts what the Bible says, is not in there.
Right.
Because the Bible itself does not contradict.
No, it doesn't. Well, it seems like it sometimes, but it doesn't. Okay, we're still doing okay? It's 3:15 already, but I've got more to go if y'all are good.
Okay.
Keep on rolling. All right. Okay, so, anyone heard the saying, and I just love this saying, the devil can't make you evil,
He'll make you busy.
but he can make you busy? How do you spend your 24 hours? Just putting that out there. Let's go over to Deuteronomy
What was it?
17.
The devil cannot make you evil,
The devil can't make you evil,
but he can keep you busy.
but he can make you busy.
He's a
Thank you.
master of distraction.
Either way, it doesn't matter. Because if you're keeping busy, who got you that way?
Correct.
Not God.
Well, because the whole deal with Satan is he's a deceiver, through deception, he'll, guess he's a substitute. He'd love for us to substitute something other than,
And it's true that he doesn't make you evil. And there are a lot of evil things that happen in the Bible. And God said Solomon did evil, didn't say he was evil. He said he did evil. The Israelites continually did evil in the sight of God by going after other gods. You know, so there's a big difference. And it goes to what Eddie talks about a lot, about what are you being led by? You know, are you being led by God and his spirit, or are you being led by yourself and the world and everything else, which is the enemy? Because frankly, the world is the enemy of God. Yes or no?
Yes.
You're either for him or against him, and most of the world is against him, as far as how the world works. Yes, Jim?
Do you think there's a difference between when it says that he hardened Pharaoh's heart? Is he doing the acting there more? Is he making them quote unquote evil?
That's above my pay grade, that kind of a
I
thought.
mean, I wonder if there's a
Yeah.
distinction between that versus
Might
being hard, stiff-necked and,
Well, and it could be, God put that in Pharaoh for the purpose of what he
Sure.
did. Solomon was, 700 wives.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna go do all this stuff.
yeah, God didn't put that
Direction.
in Solomon.
Well, God
Right.
is never going to force anything upon his people because that is a picture of rape. It's a violation.
Hmm.
He is never going to force anything on someone. They have to be open to what he wants to give or establish.
that willingness. There was-
Yes, the willingness.
Do you think about
But he
it?
can take the fear of not going against God away from him. And that way he can harden his heart, because then it allows him to have his ego take over.
I think hardening of the heart goes to what Paul speaks of in Romans. You know, you've gone so far down the sin path that, it doesn't bother you anymore. So at that point, God just gives you over to what you're doing.
That reprobate mind.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point of you bringing that up. That part of Romans, the end of chapter 1, even though they knew the decree of God that said death was the punishment, they did it anyway. This is New Testament times Paul's writing about. He's talking about people that existed at that time that know the decree of God. Is the decree of God in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? No. The decree of God, they knew the decree of God, if you do these things, you die. Where did they get that from? From the Torah, from the scriptures, which is the gospel from the beginning. That's a whole other topic. Okay.
I want to go back to what you were talking
Yes.
about this, the substitution and the time, this time thing, because I think it's so incredibly important that it's something that, as a society, I know I've been guilty for so many years of my life, allowing myself to desire entertainment, to entertain myself, whether it be sitting in front of a TV, playing cards, watching a football game, I mean, the whole gamut of things. But it's just like we're saying, substitution. Our lives are lives of choices. We choose
Right.
things that are good for us, or we choose things that are bad for us, or things that we think sometimes are neutral. But however we choose to invest our time, it is what our lives are really all about.
Yeah.
And,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I'll say, people like Dave Ramsey to teach about financial.